Okay guys, so it's been a while and I have just been so busy from like August, and I will continue being busy until halfway through October, probably until the holidays. Like, it's just all gonna be busy. There's a lot of travel coming up, a lot of really exciting things. But I was gone for a week in Nashville, and when I was gone, I fell behind on my reading goal. And what I mean by that is that I'm no longer ahead. So basically, I checked my Goodreads and it said, you're on track. And I was like, that stresses me out because I want to be ahead. I know that life is about to get really busy again with more traveling and more stuff coming up. So I decided that I'm just gonna read a lot of books right now. I have no like goal or theme that I'm going with. I'm literally just reading a bunch of books. And the first one that I wanted to read is Love on the Brain, and I actually will play a clip of when I first started reading this book. Hey guys, I just finished reading my Reading Through World Literature books, and I had so many, and they were honestly pretty depressing and just a lot to read because they're about people's lives and real things that happened. And when I finished that, I was like, you know, I just need like a really cute romance read. And this one I've been wanting to read for a while, Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. And I'm like just a little bit into it, and I like forgot how sweet and cute rom-com books are. Like, they're just so fun. So this one, I just started it, but I kind of figured out like the main character is going to NASA and she's leading this project with her nemesis from grad school who like hated her and wants nothing to do with her. She runs a secret social media account, and she's friends with a guy that also runs a secret social media account, and I'm like, I know where this is going. And it's really cute because there's like little mentions of things, and I'm just loving it. So I just started Love on the Brain, really excited to read this one and like be back reading rom-coms because I missed just like getting invested in a book and not wanting to stop reading it. And then I finished reading it literally in 2 days, and Ali Hazelwood is such a fun author. I first want to say that I respect so much that she is a woman in STEM and a romance novelist because I just think that is so cool. And it's kind of the perfect blend. Like, you have this really smart woman and she's writing romances, and it's like so fun. But this one also has a lot of features of being a woman in STEM and just the mistreatment of women in science fields and math and technology and all of those things. And so the one thing that was hard for me in this book was not that. I loved that she had that in this book and she talks about that and the main character goes through that. But it was hard for me. There was a lot of repetition. Like, the main character, basically B is the main character. And for example, she has this RA, like resident assistant, and every time like the resident assistant is mean to her, she's like, oh, she's so mean, I love her so much. And so I just felt like there was way too much repetition in this book, and it was kind of annoying at different elements. Like, I was like, can we have a little bit of variation? And I'm sick of hearing the same thing. But I did probably, I would give this 3 stars. It was really addicting. I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't one that has like stuck with me. Like, I read it a couple days ago now, and I haven't really thought about it since. And honestly, the whole end just felt really weird and unrealistic and just kind of out there. Even though it's like built up throughout the book, by the time it was actually coming to fruition, I was like, this doesn't feel real. Like, the payoff just wasn't quite what I wanted it to be. And I think I would have enjoyed this one if I had read it while I was engaged and like thinking about commitment and all those things. But now, being almost 2 years married, I was like, it's not as relatable. Like, I think I would have connected with B a lot if I would have read this a long time ago, which makes me sad because this one has been sitting on my shelf for a long time, but I just never picked it up until now. And it was a fun romance, but pretty average. Like, I would give it 3 stars. It was a really fun read, and the elements of this book are so cute. Like, the main page is adorable, and then just the little chapters, like all the designs, the stars and everything, it's just so cute. So I was a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of the pink cover. I think the cover is so cute. but it just wasn't one of my favorite romances. Definitely worth keeping and might revisit because it is just a really cute, sweet book, but it wasn't anything like too special to me. And then this one is like a small little book that I've had on my shelf also forever, because I read The Catcher in the Rye when I was in high school, and it's actually a pretty funny story because we were on Christmas break and my English teacher was like, you all need to read The Catcher in the Rye while you're on break. And usually I didn't have that much homework over breaks, but my goal was to always get it done like first thing and then just be able to enjoy my break from school. And so out of spite, I was like, I'm gonna sit and read the entire book in one sitting and be done reading it so I don't have to read it on break. But then I started reading it and I actually fell in love with it, and I just didn't want to put it down, and it has become one of my favorite classical novels, or classic novel, ever, and I actually want to reread it soon. But because of that, I bought this one, and then I also bought 9 Stories, which is somewhere on my shelf back here. But I just all of a sudden got a craving to like read a classic novel, and so I read Franny and Zoe over the weekend, or Zooey, I'm not sure how you say it, but it's a nickname for Zachary, so I don't know how to pronounce it. But this one definitely reignited like the flame of wanting to read classics, and it was a really long debate, basically, is what I would say this book is. But I just felt like I wish I had an English class that I could dissect this with. And so it kind of brought back like the English major in me, who's like, man, I wish I could just be talking about these books with like a group of students. But it was a fun read. It was probably another 3-star. Like, it hasn't really clung to me as much as I thought it would, but I didn't enjoy it as much as The Catcher in the Rye. But I feel like Salinger has just so many elements of like being in your 20s and figuring out life and just processing like all the knowledge that you're learning about the world while you're also figuring out how to be an adult, and all of a sudden everything is so different. And so basically Franny is on the edge of having a mental breakdown, and her brother is the one, Zoe, who helps her kind of through it and like talks her through it and explains like where he's been and all these kinds of things. So it's just like a fun little read reflecting on all of these different aspects. And there's this whole like overshadowing thing where their oldest brother committed suicide, and so they just talk a lot about how they've basically been ruined since childhood because they're all really smart and they feel like their oldest brother kind of just raised them to think that they're better than everybody else, and so they're like navigating these things that are really complex that they feel like nobody else understands. So it's a very unique read. I did enjoy it. I did read it really fast, like in one day. So if you need a short like classic novel to get you back into reading them, then I would recommend this one. I said that I was feeling like reading classics, and check out the book sleeve. I am in love with this thing. But I decided, because I was feeling like reading classics, to reread The Great Gatsby in my new edition, because I have an old edition from like when I read it in high school, and then I got this one from my dad, so I decided to reread The Great Gatsby. But I also have this book called So We Read On, and it is a nonfiction book that is analyzing The Great Gatsby and F Scott Fitzgerald's life. So I decided that I'll read a chapter of The Great Gatsby and then a chapter of this book at the same time, so I can work through a nonfiction while also reading a book that I enjoy reading. But then this one has really caught me by surprise because I actually have been really enjoying it, and I've learned a lot about F Scott Fitzgerald. So I am just excited because I am so pumped that I feel like reading classics, because I feel like this never happens. So I'm like 2 chapters in to this one and then a chapter into The Great Gatsby. So here's a little update. I first of all look so gross right now because it is so hot and I am like stressed packing. So tomorrow, bright and early on a Sunday, I leave for a film shoot in LA as the assistant director, which is very, very cool, but also very, very stressful. And so as you can see, I'm like packing a ton and trying to figure out what to bring that is professional, good looking, and also not gonna make me sweat like a pig on this film shoot. So it is just very stressful. But we also have an 8-hour flight there and back, or like over 8 hours. So I packed a little pile of books that I'm bringing, and I started reading this one right after The Great Gatsby. Like, I've been really feeling classics lately, so I have This Side of Paradise that I am like currently reading. And then I have this thriller called I Know Where You Live by Greg Olson. If Only I Had Told Her. I've been wanting to read this one, and it's super thick, so I think that might be a good one to bring along. And then Bride by Allie Hazelwood, which is a good like romance, vampire, werewolves for fall. So I was like, this is a good one to bring. And then The Bone Keeper is like a mystery thriller horror book, so another good pick for fall. And I'm wondering if I will be able to get through all of those books. I feel like I'm overpacking and overdoing it with the ones that I'm bringing, but I always read on flights. Like, it's kind of what brings me peace, so that's my goal, and we'll see how much I actually read on this trip. But I need to finish packing, so I'll see you guys later. I'm back home. Last time I updated you guys, I was on my way to Los Angeles to be assistant director for the last episode of Unshakable Moxie, and we actually filmed 2 episodes while I was gone, one in LA and one in Malibu. So it was a very crazy week. Unshakable Moxie season 2 is a wrap! And I definitely overestimated how much I would read on the plane, because at the end of the trip I actually just watched movies with my friends, and it was honestly a really good time. There were some hard, stressful moments, but overall it was really good. And if you haven't seen season 1 of Unshakable Moxie, there's a link in my YouTube bio down there, so check it out. It's really good, and the whole project is just really important to me. I was gone doing that, and my goal was to read my whole stack of books that I brought, and I ended up only finishing 1. But before I read this one, I was in the midst of reading The Great Gatsby, and So We Read On, which is a nonfiction book about The Great Gatsby. And as always, The Great Gatsby was a 5-star read. I still love it just as much as I did the first time, and honestly, it's just such a good classic, and I think it helped reading this with it because it added so much to the reading experience, like about Gatsby and the American dream and all the things that were going on in the background. This one I would probably give like 3 or 4 stars. I'm not really 100% sure how to rate this one because I did really like it. It wasn't boring, like it kept me engaged. But I don't like that the author is so set on F Scott Fitzgerald. Like, I've been reading some stuff about Zelda and the way that F Scott treated her, and this author is just very much like, that didn't happen, like it's too dramatic, everyone just sympathizes with Zelda. So I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, and because of it, this one, there were a couple moments that I was like, I don't know about that, but I still really enjoyed this, and I think if you want to reread The Great Gatsby, I would recommend reading these together because it was a really fun reading experience. And then honestly, when I was leaving for California, I still just felt like reading F Scott Fitzgerald, and so I read his first novel, This Side of Paradise, and I did enjoy it for the most part, but when I was getting to the end, I was getting really antsy to finish it because I really liked that it was about like his college years and growing up and all of those things. But then when it gets to the end and it's him having this conversation with like this older man, I just didn't care for it as much. Like, I was kind of over it. So this would probably be like a 3.5 star read maybe. I still enjoyed it, and I still love F Scott Fitzgerald's writing. And I was honestly impressed because a lot of quotes that I thought were about romance in this book were actually about like friendship, and so that kind of threw me off guard. This was the only book I read on my trip, you guys. Like, I was so hopeful to read a whole pile, and I only read this one. And then before I got back, I checked my Goodreads reading goal because my goal is to read 150 books, and it is the last day of September now. And my goal is not doing so hot. So I checked it, and I was expecting to still be like on my goal. But when you look at it, let me pull it up, I am 4 books behind schedule. So I'm a little stressed, and now I'm like, I just want to be reading as much as possible. Ty and I go on another trip like next Friday, which is crazy. So my next read is a quick like fall paranormal romance read.
Stay tuned for part 2 coming soon.